Hello and welcome to the Practical Animal channel. The channel is for you if you want to know what it takes to work with animals. Domestic or wild, if wild, free living or in a collection. If domestic, then agricultural livestock or companion animals. Here on the Practical Animal, we aim to cover it all. Most weeks, we arrange an interview with an animal industry professional to ask him or her the skills and personal qualities needed to work with animals. This week, my guest is Tom SN. He's retained his surname for security reasons, but he's going to tell us what it takes to be a dog painter. Tom, welcome to the Practical Animal channel.
Hi, John. Thanks for having me.
Tom, please can you describe your career from start to date?
From start to date. Well, I'm currently an animal portrait photographer. I'm also an animal rights activist, which actually takes up the biggest part of my role. However, at the age of 16, I joined the army. I served in the British Army for 17 and a half years. And then when I retired from the army, I became an animal portrait photographer.
What prompted you to choose dog photography as an occupation?
So it's quite a different story, to be honest with you. So I was ex-service member, spent 17 and a half years in the British Army in the infantry, served all over the world on operations, and I actually developed PTSD. So when I was going through the complexities of it, and I was at my worst, I ended up getting a dog from the military who was a retired working Springer Spaniel who's actually blind. And then I just started taking pictures of him. So I've always been a photographer since I was a kid. So photography was nothing new, but the animal side of the portraiture, I used to do a lot of human portraits and still life and stuff like that. But then I was focusing my photography on the dog, getting out and about, obviously trying to recover and heal myself with my PTSD. And then it went from there. People started seeing the imagery. People started asking me to obviously do pictures of their dogs, which at the time was just a bit of a hobby because I was working on people. But then it just came flooded in and it grew from there.
Fantastic. Tom, what skills and personal qualities do you need to be a dog photographer?
Okay, so this is a question I actually get quite a lot, asked quite a lot. And the biggest aspect of being a photographer in any avenue is it's all well and good being a good photographer and understanding photography, but the key part of any channel and any subject matter is understanding the subject. So if you want to be a good dog portrait photographer, you need to understand dogs. You need to understand the behaviors, the mannerisms, because not every dog that you're going to get is going to come in and be all happy and sit and stay. You get dogs that aren't trained. You get dogs that are fear aggressive, dogs that are fearful of humans, reactive to humans, dog reactive. So you've got to be able to adopt and in essence be a dog trainer as well, because you need to have more of an understanding of dogs than what most people do. So you can aid obviously your clients in controlling those dogs that are like that in order to be able to get your imagery.
Fantastic. Tom, I'd like to ask, have there been any particular books that have influenced your thinking and career choice? Books on dog training, for example, or dog behavior?
No books at all. I'm not a big reader, John, to be honest with you. I don't really read a lot, and my partner will attest to that. I'm not a big fan of reading. So no, not really. I've got a huge passion for dogs. I've got a love of dogs. I've got a huge passion for photography, and medically in the time of my life, it sent me down that direction. And then it just grew. And the biggest thing about being a professional photographer in any aspect is creating your own style, being yourself. One of the biggest things that you see across social media and around the world with photographers is everybody finds somebody and goes, oh, I like their image. And then they imitate that imagery. And that has a massive knock-on effect. So then all of a sudden, you're not just fighting with one photographer to get that client. You're fighting with 2,000 photographers to get that client. So you need to be yourself. You need to create your own style and then people will will come to you because you're unique, you're the niche, if that makes sense. So it's like an artist. You need to have your stamp, put your stamp on it so people know that it's you.
I'm interested, Tom, in knowing the techniques and methods that you use to photograph domestic dogs. This channel is for people who want to work with animals. They may be people who want to go on and become field naturalists, studying and photographing wild animals, wild dogs. Can the same techniques be employed with wild dogs?
Yeah, so it can be, but there's a different method. So you'll end up using things called trigger traps. So what you'll do is you'll use an ambush method. So you'll lay a legacy camera out in place. You'll put your flashes out, and basically you'll sit back at a safe distance, lay some food out there or something, and you'll wait for the animal to come into what's known as military term, the killing area. As soon as it comes in, you'll operate that trigger from a distance, and then boom, it'll take the picture. So a lot of wildlife photographers, like top end, high end, very high end, they're very few and far between, but there's a couple that do use these techniques with wild animals. They'll use them with leopards, tigers, lions. So yeah, it can be used. It just takes a lot of time. I've used my technique on Highland cows, sheep, turtles, like loads of different animals. So yeah, it can be used with a lot of different animals.
That's very interesting. Going back to the theme of people watching this, maybe those wanting a career with dogs, apart from photography, what other avenues are there for people who are passionate about dogs to make a career out of it?
To make a career out of jobs with dogs?
Yes.
So not on the photography side, just as dogs.
Yeah.
You've got loads of aspects. One of the biggest things one of the things I do as well is that's actually bigger than my photography now. So I've kind of changed direction. I still do obviously all my photography. I still do my private clients, but my biggest avenue is my animal rights and fighting for dogs' rights. So I go to shelters and rescues around the world, and I'm creating a documentary series at the moment about it. But I'll photograph the dogs to find them homes. But I've also got a podcast that's called The Dog's World, and it's about the dog world. And the reason why I wanted to do that is the abuse and neglect that dogs face is because a lot of the times, because people undervalue dogs and what dogs bring to us as humanity. What they don't understand is how important they are into the roles of life that we actually play in every aspect. The mental health. You've got police protection dogs, you've got police search dogs, you've got urban search and rescue dogs, you've got mountain rescue dogs, you've got therapy dogs, you've got blind dogs, you've got dogs in every aspect of the world, rescue swimmers, you name it, dogs do these jobs. So if you want to work with dogs, you just got to understand what you like, because I guarantee if you want to be a police officer, you can be a dog handler. You want to join the army, you can be a dog handler. If you want to be a fireman, you can be a dog handler. There's so many different dogs. If you want to work detecting diseases and agents and stuff like that, there are dogs that do that job. You've got mine detection dogs. It is incredible what dogs actually do. People don't realize how big the scope of the dog world is and what they actually bring to humanity. It's incredible.
I'm guessing that you're not the only person with this specialism in photography of photographing dogs. What's your view, Tom, of the way that dogs are photographed nowadays?
Well, to be honest with you, every photographer is different. So you can't just sit there and look at it and be like, because I photograph, there's only 4 photographers in the world that photograph dogs similar to me. You'll only find 4 other photographers. 2 of those I trained, and the other 2 are just in America. So other than that, there are not a lot of people that use the techniques and to the level of how I photograph the dogs on my main imagery and my standout imagery. So most people are into like Photoshop, and they'll edit backgrounds, they'll do this, they'll just take an ambient exposure. But what they'll do is they'll take a picture, which will take 30 seconds. They'll then spend 5 hours editing that one picture. Whereas my method, using my off-camera flashes and my lights and my setup, I wait for certain days as well to make sure the climate's correct, make sure the sky's correct for the location that I'm going to be at. And it's all about getting everything to come into place. So when I'm there, I take 5 minutes to set my lighting up. I take 5 minutes to get the shot. I take the shot, and my students and my partner will attest to this. It takes me 3 minutes to edit any of my imagery. I don't Photoshop things. I don't manipulate things. I take it in camera how I want it to be at the end of it. And that's me. I'm a purist in photography. That's how I look at things.
How do you see it developing over the next sort of 10, 20 years, Tom, dog photography?
Well, the thing you've got now is it's like TVs. So cameras are going to reach their climate. They're going to reach their limit. They're already starting to reach it. People have got 100 megapixel cameras, which it's too much resolution. It's more than enough for anything you need. But to be honest with you, anything above 60 is pretty much like not really much point. But what it's going to do is how can I put it? Photography is like branding. So whenever you've got, as a photographer, and you've got your style, you need to rebrand yourself as a photographer sort of like every 6 years, because what happens is it then becomes a style. Everyone starts doing the same thing. So when you're photographing things in a certain style, you need to be thinking about what style you're going to change to next, so you can be ahead of the game next time, if that makes sense. Because the world's full of, and especially artistically as well, is a lot of sheep. So they'll see the person who's top of their game and they'll go, I want to take images the same as him. And then everybody will copy them, and it'll be in the tens of thousands. And then all of a sudden you've got tens of thousands of people marketing the same product. You're going to lose business. So then you need to rebrand. You need to change the game, change your style. And you'll notice black and white comes around sort of like every 5-6 years. So it's not really going to change much to what it has done in the last 20 years. It's just going to keep going in that circle and in that cycle, rebranding. And there's not really much more you can add to the techniques unless you start making hologram pictures of dogs. There's not really much more you can add to it. So I don't really think it's kind of at its peak for standard of imagery, I think, and quality. It's just going to be the style that changes.
Tom, if somebody's watching this and they're thinking, gosh, I absolutely love dogs, I'm passionate about them, I don't know much about photography though, what advice do you have for somebody watching this who wants to do what you do professionally, be a dog photographer?
So someone who wants to be a photographer, someone who wants to be good at anything that they do, and this comes back to my army days. What I was always told was, you need to work hard. You need to become a master, obviously, at what you do, but you need to master the basics. So you need to master the camera handling. You need to understand everything about that camera, using it in manual. Never use a camera in auto mode, because all that does is just stops your evolution as a photographer. Manual straight from the start. Learn everything about manual photography, but then look at photographers. So when it goes on to me saying about, obviously, don't copy another photographer, copy photographers, but take little bits from different photographers. So find 10 or 15 different styles of photography, take little bits from each photographer that you like, and then develop your own style that's unique. And then push on that and get known for your style, because then clients will be like, right, I want to go to him because he's the only person in the market that does that. Then you build the relationship. I have clients that come in with me 3-4 times a year. And you'll think, why does someone want the dog photographing 3-4 times a year? And they're often, it's at the same place as well. So it's the same imagery, just 9 months later.
Have you got any comments on dog training, Tom? Is there any particular training method you approve of or can't recommend? For example, I'm thinking clicker training. Is that something you've had experience of?
Yeah, so I've had experience with it. I've had experience in most aspects of dog photography. So I'm quite blessed in the sense that I've worked from dogs from the most abused stray dogs you can imagine, right up to special forces working dogs. I know some of the best dog trainers in the world. Some of my friends are some of the best dog trainers in the world. So I've been blessed to be able to pick little bits from little bits of dogs, little trainers and stuff, what they do. And as far as dog training goes, every dog's different. And there's that old saying that there's loads of ways to skin a cat. You just got to develop a training method, look at a training method you want to use and stick with it. But you've got to look at the dog as well, because every dog's different. And this is why, as a dog portrait photographer, understanding the key aspects of dog behavior and being very good at it is imperative to capturing decent imagery and capturing good imagery. So as far as dog training goes, spend time with dogs, learn dogs, understand every aspect of dogs. And like I said, I'm blessed in that. And I know a lot about dogs, I know a lot about dog training, but I don't put it into my dogs. I've got 5 dogs. They'll all sit, they'll all give me paw, they all love the cuddles, and they'll all do as they're told, but they're not like high-end crazy trained dogs. But that's because I don't want my dogs to be like that, because I don't want to lose their character. They're pets, they're part of my family. So my English Bulldog gets away with everything, but he's incidentally the best trained. He'll spin and does all sorts. So he's a bit of a daddy's boy. So obviously, but yeah, and it's just a practice. Get out there, experience the world, and just see as many dogs in as many situations as you can, and that's how you'll learn.
Tom, what's your favourite breed of dog?
My favourite breed of dog?
Yes.
Dog.
Any of them?
I love all dogs, all dogs. The easier question there would probably be, which is my least favorite dog? And my least favorite dog, and no offense to anybody who's got them, are schnauzers. And the reason being is I've worked with police dogs, special forces dogs, army dogs, every type of dog you can imagine. I've been in sleeves, bite work. I've gone around fear aggressive dogs that just want to rip people off. And the only 2 dogs I've ever been bit by are schnauzers. And they was on shoots. For some reason, and I don't have a clue why, but they just wanted to sink the teeth in me. I've been obviously bit by a couple of strays and stuff, but they were deliberately giving them a hand to save the life and to get hold of them and stuff. But that's neither here nor there. But yeah, schnauzers are probably my least favorite because they always want to bite me. Now, my favorite dog is, and everybody who knows me and all of my following and all my clients know this, is English Bulldog.
Any particular reason?
Yeah, Ronnie. So my English Bulldog, Ronnie, is my boy, is my best mate. So me and him are like that. If Dad goes somewhere, Ronnie wants to come. When I go away, my partner sends me pictures and he lies down by the front door during the day and that, waiting for me to get. I just love him to pieces. Yeah, he's really cool. So, and everyone loves Ronnie. But I love all dogs. I love all dogs.
And Tom, what's your most treasured possession in your studio?
My most treasured possession in my studio. So I always this is another thing I always tell people as well. So when people go on about like studios and stuff like that, the greatest studio is Earth, is the world. I don't like studio portraits. I hate doing studio portraits, and the reason being is it's always the same. It's, yeah, you can do minor little things, but what you got to remember is a dog's not a human. So you can't say, right, just move your head to the right a little bit, move your head to the left, up a little bit. You can't do that with a dog. You might find 1 in 20 million you can do it with, but you will not get clients that come in that you can do that with dogs. It just doesn't happen. So my most prized possession in my studio is the world. And it's a nice, moody, dramatic sky. I love my outdoor portraits. I'm all about my outdoor portraits, and it's the sky.
I love that. Tom, what's your best dog fact, please?
My best dog fact. That's a tough one. That is my best dog fact. Okay, so here's my best dog fact. People who look at English Bulldogs and think English Bulldogs are slow, fat, overweight, and lazy, that is not the case. If you see my English Bulldog and you come and meet him, he is rapid. He can run all day. He runs around the garden. He's an absolute beast. English Bulldogs are healthy dogs. It's owners that make them unhealthy. That's my best dog fact, is if you have an English Bulldog, you diet them properly, you exercise them properly, and you look after them right, they are fit and healthy dogs.
You got any view on this school of thought, Tom, about feeding dogs raw food?
Well, to be honest with you, it's what works for the dogs. I mean, and it's what works for the humans as well. So it's raw food's good naturally, as long as you feed them the right raw food and you're doing it properly. Because what you got to think is, food that's put in a bag has been food before. It's the same thing, but it's been put through loads of grinds, loads of blenders, things added to it and stuff like that. So as long as you get the nutritional value right and you cook it right and you feed them right, raw food can be phenomenal for dogs, absolutely phenomenal. But it's got to be right for the humans, because, like, for instance, we've got 5 dogs. If we did raw food for all 5 of our dogs, it'd take us about 4 hours a day we'd lose, doing it properly and doing it right. But for people that compete and stuff like that with their dogs and feed them raw food, like people that proper massively do it as like a business with the breeding and all that sort of stuff, if they've got the time, they've got the time. It's what works for your dog. And some dogs don't like raw food, some love it. It's all on the
And
dog.
for anybody watching this who wants to work with dogs, Tom, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
You want to work with dogs? Yeah, just remember that dogs aren't a possession. They're not just a dog. They're just as valuable as humans. And like I said earlier on, dogs give more to humanity than what humanity gives itself. Dogs don't start wars. Dogs don't create mass diseases, mass genocide. What dogs do, though, is during them situations is they stand by humanity and protect it. And when people say, the other thing I want to say is that when people say there's no such thing as a bad dog, that's like saying there's no such thing as a it's obviously when they say there's no such thing as a bad dog, it's a bad human. That's like saying there's no such thing as a bad kid, it's a bad human. You do get bad dogs. Dogs do come around, but there's a reason why they've got into that. And it's not often through malice or through neglect from a human. It's just lack of understanding of when to mark them triggers, what not to allow your dog to do, what type of dog breed you've got and what you're allowing him to do. Does that make sense? And it's the same as with kids. You do have bad parents, you do have bad owners, but you also have good parents that love their kids, and then their kid turns out to be an absolute melt. That's not their fault. It just happens, and it's the same with dogs. But it's just often the things that you're not doing. So just look at dogs as the same as humans, and treat a dog how a dog treats you, and treat people the way that dogs treat you. Because if you do that, you're going to make the world a far better place. Don't treat humans how humans treat humans. Treat humans how dogs treat humans, and that's what's going to make the world a far better place.
We've finally, Tom, we've spoken a couple of times beforehand. You do work abroad with dogs, don't you? Can you comment on your work abroad?
Yeah, so I do a lot of stuff abroad. Like I said, I started doing about 18 months ago, actually. I started doing a lot of rescue work. So I started going down to rescues and just filling a little bit of free time, taking pictures of rescue dogs that needed homes. And it went through the roof. Like, obviously, dogs were finding homes like that through the imagery. And then I started doing that abroad. And now I've got contacts all over the world. I've got a lot of clients over the world, private clients in like the US and all that sort of stuff. But I've got mainly rescues wanting me to go out there around the world and do my video stuff, do my imagery, help them raise awareness, and yeah, just help them with the dogs, give them some advice and tips on the dogs and the photography, and just try and get as much awareness into these dogs as we possibly can. I'm just a pure dog lover, but yeah, I travel around the world doing it, and that's really cool. Yeah, I absolutely love it. It's got so many branches. It's crazy.
That sounds absolutely great. Tom, thank you very much indeed for being on the Practical Animal Channel.
No, thank you very much, mate. Absolute pleasure, and thanks for having me.
The pleasure was all mine. Thanks, Tom.
Cheers, mate.
This is the Practical Animal Interview.